Hello and welcome back to Council Watch. A bit different today. Something a little odd has happened. The first thing is actually nice. I don't know if anybody's noticed if they've watched any of these council meetings, but they've become a bit more boring and things are getting done. And Andy and Wendy are getting on like a house on fire. Yep. They're in agreement more often now than in direct opposition, which can only be a good thing. Now, what's actually happening is the start of the meeting has changed again. Do you remember when we had this?
In the interest of openness and transparency, the law permits recording and photography to report on the proceedings of council meetings when they are open to the public.
Remember that bit, it'll become important later on.
To ensure the efficiency of the meeting, no member may speak for more than 3 minutes on one item or more than once.
Councillors can only speak for 3 minutes and then they can respond, and that's it. So there is a 3-minute clock. And I was rather thinking, oh God, I'm going to have to do a countdown style timer because some council members do tend to sort of talk often for longer than 3 minutes, and I thought, well, that's going to be a bit difficult. So I was imagining having to have a little clock in the corner, you know, boo, and I was sort of a bit prepared for that. But then this meeting happened, and Andy, who was chairing it, did the preamble, but it was different again.
To ensure the efficiency of the meeting, no member may speak for more than 3 minutes on one item or more than once. There is provision for that to be relaxed at chair's discretion in standing orders. So if anyone wants to, just please let me know. And if time in the meeting permits, I'll give it due consideration.
In standing orders, which are, you know, the rules, it does indeed say 3 minutes. Unless the chair of the meeting decides not. And so it was a bit pointless changing the preamble, because if there's also a clause that means it doesn't have to be 3 minutes at the chair's discretion, it was a bit of a waste of time, really. But something else is happening. Committees, subcommittees, and working groups. What's the difference? Well, up till now, the goings-on in committees and subcommittees have been visible. They're streamed. Working groups are very different. Working groups don't even need to have an official present, from what I can gather, and they're not minuted. And working groups are where lots of the sort of initial thoughts come from. The results then get presented up the chain in public. But there seems to be a drive to get these working groups secret. I expected this change about 3 minutes to sort of come up in the meetings, and very oddly it didn't. It just wasn't mentioned. There was a big change made and everybody went along with it. No discussion, no public discussion. Clearly there was discussion because it happened, but we didn't get to see any of that. We didn't get to find out why or any reasons for the change. It was just implemented into the meetings that are public, which I thought was a bit odd, and I really did think it would kick off and lots of people would be angry about it. And they didn't. They just accepted it and carried on. I thought that was a bit strange. But in this meeting, the F&G meeting, it got a bit deeper. It also appears that subcommittees do not have to be publicly viewable. They don't have to have any scrutiny at all by the public. They can be done totally in secret. The acting town clerk confirmed that subgroups don't have to be public. The working groups can have an official president and can have minutes. But they don't have to be public. Andy kept making the point that there was an awful lot of to and fro in these meetings, and it was where ideas could be kicked about before being presented forward to the public facing things. And it looks to me, as a member of the public looking in, that more and more decisions are going into those secret sessions, the working groups, and I don't know if they've started doing subcommittees in secret yet, but we don't know what they talk about. And he assures us that there's nothing dodgy about this and no decisions are made, just working through the groundwork. Lots and lots of papers, lots of things to read and digest and chat about. And some of the comments that were made just made me wonder if there's a quest for secrecy. It's increasing and it's not very healthy. And basically it leaves the public sessions with just voting and things go through on the nod, because all the people there seem to know about what went on. So they go, yeah, I'm in favour. In favour of what? We don't know. We don't know what the options were. Strictly speaking, we're not entitled to know. It's got nothing to do with us. We're just members of the public. And our council seem to be drifting into keeping as much as they possibly can secret. Instead of being open and transparent, they're being secretive and possibly devious. Wendy, in actual fact, in one of the meetings I've just been watching, actually said this.
Councillor Brooks.
Can I talk about parking, or would you prefer I talk about that in confidential?
I think you could mention it.
We're getting to the stage where to talk about parking for the town hall might be considered confidential. Remember, at the end of every meeting, just before they push the big off switch, they say this.
Okay, admissions to meetings then, to resolve that under the Public Bodies Admission to Meetings Act 1960, the public be excluded from the meeting on the grounds that publicity would be prejudicial to public interest by reason of the confidential nature of the business to be transacted, namely any employment matters and legal issues relating to the matters on this agenda. So can I have a proposal that we go into confidential session? Councillor Rappensberger, seconded by Councillor Barker. All in favour, please. Everyone, so we'll now go into confidential session. Thank you very much.
Can anyone explain this to me? Legal matters relating to items on the agenda and employment matters. This doesn't appear to mean that just any old thing can get put into confidential setting, which is exactly what they do. If you look at the number of things that are going to be talked about in confidential, very often they have no relation whatsoever, it would appear, to these two headings. The Act does allow things to go into confidential, and it's actually not that specific. It does the thing about public interest. But our council have got this little bit. You know, they actually say confidential because of this caption. And most of the things that they're going to talk about don't relate to this. It's perfectly understandable if they're going to talk about competing contracts, if they're going to talk about staff pay, conditions, all that sort of stuff. Yeah, that's not for us public to listen. But they're going to talk about stuff that they've just talked about, that we know what it's going to be talked about, but it's secret. And this is where I think they've overstepped. And with the changes today, I think we've gone one step the wrong way. And this open framework? No, there is no openness anymore. What seems to be happening is find any excuse, slip it into confidential, and that's where it gets talked about. Or in the future, it's going to be talked about in working groups or non-public subcommittees. This is how they're thinking.
So nothing happens behind closed doors in terms of anything being agreed or anything like that. And as I said, they are very much people throwing in ideas and playing around with what if scenarios rather than things being agreed. But nevertheless, they are regular business. We currently have an arrangement where the standing orders and policies are all reviewed annually.
I'm very unhappy with the way a standing orders is currently operating, because we've had various meetings and very few of those comments sometimes seem to be carried over. So we've got no record of that discussion.
You can set hairs running. So at what point, if you're just saying we might do this, we might do that, at what point is that openness and what point is it setting hairs running and just causing confusion because it might not be approved? I think the point at which there's a firm recommendation going to full council is when it's actually being weighed up in F&G. So I think they need to be, when people are just looking at text and throwing out ideas on text, I think they need to be able to function without it being in public session so people can speak freely. Do you want to speak to the briefing paper, Sarah, or I've read it? Because there is an option, isn't there, for a subcommittee that doesn't have delegations to actually hold the meeting without it being in public session. But it is still.
I think you've covered most of what was there anyway. So I think the baseline is that the law says that meetings of the council and its committees have to be held in public. There's no obligation to hold subcommittee meetings in public.
But I've also listened to what Sarah had and read the briefing paper, and we have a halfway house option, which is where it can be formalised as a subcommittee, but because neither of these have any delegations, we have the option to hold them not in public session. So from that point of view, they can function as working groups. People can speak freely, what if scenarios, play around with things like that without setting hairs running publicly because nothing's been agreed. And then actually, when it goes to council and it's being chewed over by the committee and then full council, then obviously that it can be discussed openly because that's the point at which agreement is going to be reached.
So the reason they want to do it in private is so that people can speak freely. Really? Most of the arguments that this channel was started to talk about were because things were being discussed and people had opposite points of view. And that's where tempers got lost. It's where people started to yell and rant and rave. That sort of stuff. Now, we don't do that anymore. The ranting and raving seems to have stopped. So has it just moved into these private areas that we're not able to see? I don't know. But there's huge numbers now of the meetings since the AGM where everything goes so smoothly, discussion is minimal, and there's nothing contentious at all. Now, these things must still happen. My assumption is that the contention and the discussion and the ranting and raving may still happen. We just don't get to see it anymore because it's no longer deemed for public sort of consumption. I'd love to be wrong on this. So for once, please, if I am wrong, tell me. But this isn't open government at all. This is any excuse to get things into private. So the public are being removed from seeing how the discussions go. I mean, if you don't know what people are talking about when they're deciding yes, no, yes, no, yes, no, how are you supposed to let people know that, you're anti something? The only point is when the decision is made at an open meeting where we're going to do this and everybody in favour and there's a vote. Where's the discussion gone? It was done in secret. And that, I think, is bad. And it's a really bad step because trust's gone. I mean, I cannot now report on a council meeting because I don't know what went on in private. I don't know what deals were done. I don't know what pacifiers were put in place. All I know is the people who are usually anti or very for in diametric opposition doesn't happen anymore. If Andy and Wendy are agreeing with each other all the time, what's happened? I don't trust it at all. In actual fact, I think the whole thing stinks. The acting town clerk taking part in a meeting, telling people that there's no reason why the subcommittees have to be public. You know, you're giving the councillors the opportunity to keep things even quieter than they are now. And there are loads of things going into confidential setting that don't need to be in there. That's patently obvious. Not everything contravenes that act, and certainly doesn't contravene your little bit about legal matters and that sort of stuff. You know, you're just looking for the tiniest excuse now to put things into confidential setting to which the public have no access, and soon it would appear that not even minutes are going to be made public. So, you know, it doesn't matter if it's a subcommittee or whether it's a working group. We aren't going to get to know what they're talking about. We have no idea what our representatives are actually doing, and that's a bit sad. So, you know, it would appear that I won't have any videos to make because nothing happens anymore. Everything shortly will become a done deal. All the serious negotiations done in private. The town hall project and the marina theatre, more and more goes into confidential. In actual fact, the meetings on those two subjects have become good news forums. Report the good news in public, keep the bad news for private. Both of those have reported issues, things not quite going right. You know, we've got the town hall, and they've removed all the tiles and discovered it's decrepit underneath and full of pigeon poo. It's going to cost more money, it's going to take more time, it's going to set the project back to 2027, to a rotten time of the year. That's been reported, but we don't know anymore. We don't know how much extra money it's going to cost. I'm sure at some point it will be sorted out and we'll be told the conclusion. With the Marina Theatre, well, all sorts of things go into confidential there. The sort of disparity in the reporting is quite extreme. We get told all good news. We haven't been told if it's going to open on time. Lots of the things they're talking about make me think it's not. And that's bad news. But the public are not entitled to know that. Perhaps if they told the public a bit more, we'd trust them a bit more. But sadly, it's going downhill. I was quite hopeful a few months back, but now all we're seeing is a sanitised version of the truth. I've got nothing to report on because we're not told anything. Tell the public as little as possible, and hopefully the problems will go away. That's certainly the feel I'm getting. Not very good. Hopefully there will be some more of these videos, but don't bank on it because we're not being told anything worth reporting. See you maybe on the next video. Take care, look after yourselves.